I was thinking about the wafer paper flowers and how to get the petals to roll on a rose like this, where, like you can see, this one here is a little bit rolled back. You don't want to do a petal and just have it be completely flat, like this one is pretty flat. And it just looks like paper, and you want it to look a little more realistic. So what people have said is the easiest thing to do is to put it all together and then take some water and just lightly run it along the edge of the petal, and that will soften it up. But that is also a little unpredictable about how it will soften it up, and you can end up getting something like this that's just a little bit curved, or you could end up getting something like this that kind of actually broke because the paper is a little bit brittle. So I was thinking about it, and wafer paper is made of potato starch, vegetable oil, and water, and it absorbs the water obviously. But I thought if it's made of vegetable oil, then why can't you put Crisco on it? So I took some Crisco, which is right here. I'm going to use these to show you. This is just a regular petal. It hasn't been, nothing's been done to it at this point. So if I tried to roll it, the petals will bend, but it's going to bend here. You'll see a little bend mark. You don't want that. It's like folding a piece of paper. If you take a little bit of Crisco, and you don't need a whole lot, and just rub it along the edge. And you can rub this all over the entire petal too if you want. There's really no reason to, but you can. It just kind of greases the paper up and softens it up. And it's very interesting because if you leave it overnight, it kind of dries with no evidence that it was greased up to begin with. And you can also do this with the spray vegetable oil. I tried it with that just to see what would happen. But it makes the paper kind of translucent. And now all of a sudden, after it absorbs in a little bit, see how well you can take this and actually really roll it. So instead of just folding it, you can really roll the petal. So you go over here, and you can put a little bit more on there if you need to, or just let it sit for a minute to kind of absorb in there. But you can really, really roll the petal, and it will keep the shape, and it will dry like that. And you can't do that with water because the water will just melt it. So the vegetable shortening, aka Crisco, will allow you to give the petal a little more flexibility. And if you leave it like this, it'll dry in that position, and then you end up with the petal that you can use for the roses later, and you don't have to mess with it while it's on the flower itself. So if you cut this right here, the interesting thing is that I greased up an entire petal yesterday, and even after that, if you put the water on it, it'll still stick to itself. So if you do that, then that makes the petal cup. So now you have a rose petal. And you can fold this over in the back if you want. But if you just let this dry, it will dry in the cupped position. It looks like a rose petal, and it doesn't really have any evidence up here of being greased up or oily or anything. It absorbs it into the paper. Now I did 3 to show you the difference. This one I did, same method with the Crisco. I rolled the petal. I did these yesterday. And I had put Crisco all over the entire petal and then put some water here and stuck this together to give it the cup. So it's a little bit cupped. It's rolled on the edge. And it is a little shiny because I had put Crisco over the whole thing. But it didn't shrink. This area didn't shrink where I had the water on it. And a lot of times when you do put the water on it, it'll kind of compress and shrink. This one I sprayed with a non-stick cooking spray. And it acted pretty much the same way as the Crisco one, but it made it a little darker and translucent. So that's probably not the best look that you're going for. But it did kind of grease it up the same way, so you could probably use vegetable oil too. Now this one I did with water, and what I found interesting about this is that after sitting overnight, this is the little crease where I glued the edges together, the corner. Oops, I cracked it. But that's what happens. It kind of shrinks up and pulls itself up. And the ones with the Crisco didn't do that. And this is the edge where I rolled it over just a little bit, and see what happened. It kind of shrunk, and it's just not pretty. So if you're going to do rose petals, I would use the vegetable oil method, or Crisco. I guess vegetable oil would probably work, but Crisco is a little bit easier to control. I'm assuming that you can use this on other flower petals also. I haven't tried it, so experiment and let me know. Leave a comment. And it's just another thing that you can do to make the wafer paper a little more flexible and easier to work with.